Welcome to the VSBA's resolution presentation, which we've taped this year to make it easier for board members to review at your convenience. I'm Susan Holson, Director of Education Services at VSBA, and I'm joined today by Sandra Cameron, Director of Public Policy, and Vice President of VSBA, Dawn Collins, who also serves as Chair of the Resolutions Committee. Let's start with a quick reminder about VSBA resolutions and the process that's followed to adopt them. According to VSBA bylaws, resolutions are positions taken by the association on issues of importance to Vermont school boards. They may include recommendations for action by the VSBA, local school boards, the legislature, the executive branch, or other decision-making bodies. But what does that really mean? It means that the members determine what issues are important and what positions you want VSBA to take. Resolutions provide guidance to VSBA staff and the board when they are working on legislative issues and developing services for members. Any board can submit a resolution. The VSBA Board Resolutions Committee, consisting of the Vice President who serves as Chair and one representative from each of VSBA's 11 geographic regions, reviews all submissions and recommends action to the full board. At its August meeting, the VSBA board voted on recommendations to make to the membership, which are either pass, do not pass, or take no position. By now, you should have received the board's resolutions report, including its recommendations. Each member supervisory union or supervisory district designates a board member as its delegate to cast one vote on each of the proposed resolutions at VSBA's annual meeting. All board members have the right to discuss the resolutions, but there's only one vote per SU or SD. This year, the annual meeting will be held virtually on October 29th at 5 o'clock. We'll be sending more details about participating in that meeting as we get closer. The purpose of this video is to assist you in understanding the proposed resolutions so that you can form positions for your boards prior to that annual meeting. We also hope it familiarizes you with the process of how VSBA positions are developed.
The first resolution was submitted by the Burlington School District on the topic of school board officers.
Hi, my name is Mike Fisher. I'm the school board clerk for Burlington School District. We brought forward this resolution to address the potential to remove school board officers in the year after they have been elected. The background to this is, in our past, we had a school board chair behave poorly during a meeting, and the school board was not permitted by policy to remove the chair. We added language into our policy to permit the removal of officers by the board, but we were advised that state law Title 16 does not explicitly allow removal of school board officers. It allows for election for a year, but doesn't mention removal. So we feel that this is something that a minor correction to the law that would simply allow school boards to, if they so desire, put in policies or bylaws that would allow them to remove somebody who has been elected as a board officer and replace them with somebody else if they did not act in the best interest of the board. This is not advocating for a board to remove a board member who has been elected by the public to the board. It would simply be to have somebody who was elected as, let's say, the chair, and then the board would decide within the year that the chair was not meeting the needs of the body, of the board, and be able to remove that board chair. They would stay on the board, but as a sitting member. We're not advocating for any particular process to remove an officer, just for the law to permit boards to create a process in their policy if they so desire. Thank you.
Resolution 1, submitted by the Burlington School District, asks the Vermont Legislature to update Title 16 in order for school boards to address any concerns regarding board officers, specifically the board clerk and the board chair.
The VSBA board recommends passing this resolution. The Bennington-Rutland School Board submitted the second resolution about broadband access to education.
Hi, my name is Jim Salzgiver, and I'm with the Bennington-Rutland Supervisory Union. I'm the chair. And the BRSU this year decided to submit a resolution for the VSBA resolutions with respect to broadband access for our children, our students. Basically, we all know that technology has become a much bigger element of education over the years. And, we've been trying to, move to the point of ensuring that our students have devices. And one difficulty over the years has been we're trying to focus on providing our students with the best education possible and with equity of opportunity of education. And we can provide all our students with devices, but we can't ensure that all of our students have equal access to broadband. And the pandemic certainly highlighted this as a huge issue. When we all had to go to remote learning in the spring, we worked as hard as we could to fill all the gaps where we had students and families that didn't have access to broadband but really needed it. But it became really clear that an issue that was already an issue of equity for students became an even bigger issue. So our board decided to focus on broadband access and wanted the state of Vermont to essentially view broadband for students and families in support of education as being a very high item on their to-do list. Certainly the pandemic has increased the focus of the state on broadband generally, but we think that providing quality education to all of our children is one of the most important obligations the government has. And this has become a serious issue for school districts across the state, and certainly ours. So our resolution asks the state of Vermont to work on ensuring that there's broadband access to support education for all students and families across the state. We also wanted to ensure that we all have issues of managing our budgets as well. We recognize that ensuring access to all students and families for education will come at a cost. And within our resolution, we state specifically that cost should not be borne by school districts. This is an infrastructure problem across the state. It's not a school district problem. Therefore, we want the state of Vermont to focus very much on ensuring that our students and their families can have access to broadband to support their education, but that the school districts will not be picking up the check. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what we're looking to accomplish. I expect that a lot of districts around the state have a very similar issue, and hopefully we'll find this is something that would be supported as a VSBA resolution. Thank you.
Resolution 2, submitted by the Bennington-Rutland Supervisory Union, seeks to provide universal access to high-speed broadband services for every student and family in Vermont, and for the provision of financial support to those families who cannot reasonably afford it. The current health crisis has highlighted the inequities and significant need for broadband access, and this should not be an unfunded cost to school districts. This resolution was widely supported.
The VSBA board recommends passing this resolution. The third resolution was proposed by the Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District to hold harmless student education during a state of emergency.
I'm Edie Granning. I am the chair of the Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District. We have never put forth any resolutions before. We found that there have been a number of issues that have been very important and have come up as things that need to change. And we were hoping that the Vermont School Board Association would support us in making these changes statewide. Our first concern is that we are, as school boards, held harmless because of the COVID pandemic. Our concern is that the Ed Fund may not be fully funded this year and that the deficits could cause education issues in our schools. We want to make sure that we are allowed, and as districts, to ensure funding for all students and not responsible in case the state is unable to fund our programming.
Resolution 3, submitted by the Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District, states that Vermont's pre-K to 12 school districts should have the resources needed to operate schools safely during a declared state of emergency so that students are held harmless from reductions to education funds. This resolution recognizes increased expenses to school districts during the pandemic.
The VSBA board recommends passing this resolution. Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District also sent in the next resolution regarding the governance of career and technical education schools.
I'm Edie Granning. I am the chair of the Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District. Our resolution is to request a study so that the sending schools for tech education centers have a say in how those centers are governed, how funding is used, and what programming is offered. We know that this is done differently across the state, and as we are a sending district with the largest number of students sent into one of the tech centers from outside of that district, we are told afterward what decisions are made, but our funds are used to make those decisions. We would like to have a seat at the table as those decisions are made, and we are sure that there are other districts across the state that are incurring the same issues.
Resolution 4, submitted by the Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District, requests a study to better understand the variety of CTE governing models and budgeting structures that exist across the state. The study would recommend changes to enable all districts to share governance over the operation and budgeting of the CTE schools in their region. There was significant discussion regarding this proposal, and the VSBA board was concerned that the proposed resolution had a predetermined specific outcome of the study.
The VSBA board recommends an action of do not pass. The fifth resolution, also submitted by Mount Mansfield Union Unified District, regarding effective and efficient board work.
Hi again, Edie Granning from Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District. Our concern as a board on our resolution about effective and efficient board work is that there are some laws in the state that require the school board of directors to be responsible for certain issues that should be delegated to the superintendent. Hiring principals comes across as one of those examples, but there are many. As our districts continue to grow and the responsibilities become more incumbent on the superintendent, it gets very confusing as to who is responsible to make these decisions, and it becomes difficult for boards to hold those superintendents responsible for making those decisions. We would like the laws in the state to be reviewed so that these decisions can be more clear. Along the same lines, with our larger districts, it is very difficult when decisions are required to be made in a town meeting. We no longer have one town in our district. We have 5. We cover 200 square miles. There are districts that are much larger than ours. When you choose one town, one location to have a town meeting, it makes it very difficult for a large number of constituents to attend those meetings and to be there to make those decisions. We feel that it's confusing to town meetings to be required to make these decisions. And we think that Australian ballot decisions encourage more participation. We would like to see that as an option, either a town meeting or an Australian ballot as the way that decisions are made district-wide. Thank you so much.
Resolution 5, submitted by the Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District, originally addressed two topics: A, effective and efficient board work, and B, Australian ballot for district votes. The Mount Mansfield Board revised the proposal as two separate resolutions, 5A and 5B. 5A calls for state statutes and regulations to be reviewed and amended to provide school districts with greater flexibility to delegate responsibilities to their superintendents.
The VSBA board recommends an action of do not pass.
5B calls for State Statute 17 VSA 2680 to be amended to provide school districts with the option to engage voters directly with Australian ballot questions without first conducting a district meeting in order to make a decision by Australian ballot.
The VSBA board recommends passing this resolution. The sixth resolution was submitted by the board of the Blue Mountain Union School District. This resolution is on the emotional wellness of students.
My name is Angeline Alley. I am the school board chair for Blue Mountain Union, and we had put forth a resolution to the VSBA for local boards to increase the availability of mental health counseling, emotional wellness, and psychological supports to students as Vermont schools return to class. The discussion that we had during our board meeting revolved around the social emotional impact on children and how some schools and districts need to prepare for the impact of increased trauma once at school learning reopens in some capacity during the fall. We felt that implementing programs in the place to help mitigate behavioral issues. We are very concerned about students on both sides of the spectrum. So for those students that are coming back to the in-learning, the heading back to school, we want to make sure that, that they're safe, that they're emotionally and socially, I guess they're okay, that the challenges that everybody is facing, that we have, something in place for all of these students, and as well as for those students that are, on the other end of the spectrum, that are remote learning and strictly remote learning, that they are still receiving social and emotional supports that they need. So we want to make sure, we talked about as well how research showed that children and adolescents are experiencing mental distress due to the disruptions of the closure of schools, activities, and maintaining social and physical distancing. We had a conversation about that and trying to figure out reopening school and how we were able to manage all of those things, such as the maintaining social and physical social distancing, and how we can have students that are virtually learning or remote learning still feel involved. And I think that Blue Mountain has come up with a good plan. We are also working with groups such as We Are Hope and the National Empowerment Center to bring in programs for adults and students to better support young people, and young people to better support each other during times of crisis. In addition, there continues to be a crisis addiction around mental health in our communities, and programs like these need to be offered in schools and supported by the General Assembly. And those are things that have been heavily talked about during our board meetings, how to help students, adults, staff members during this pandemic.
Resolution 6, submitted by the Blue Mountain Union School District, calls on the General Assembly to expand funding for increased mental health counseling, emotional wellness, and psychological supports to students, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic and its aftermath. This would further support schools meeting the AOE's education quality standards, health and safe schools through the whole school, whole community, whole child model.
The VSBA board recommends passing this resolution. Resolution number 7 was proposed by the Vermont School Boards Association through the board's resolution committee, and the topic is equity and anti-racism.
Hi, I'm Colleen McKinnon. I'm a member of the VSBA board, and I served on the VSBA board's resolutions committee. Following the killing of George Floyd and the subsequent protests, they helped shine a light on structural racism and the legacy of slavery and discrimination against people of color in our country. Racism has no place in our public institutions and no place in our schools. We understand schools play an important role in either sustaining or disrupting structural racism. This resolution proposal is a small step towards disrupting structural racism.
Resolution 7, submitted by the Resolutions Committee, states that VSBA should demonstrate and promote the unequivocal collective responsibility for equitable and inclusive education environments while addressing injustice and racial inequity. VSBA should 1, promote and support implicit bias training for all faculty and staff in Vermont Public Schools, and 2, promote professional learning for school leaders and school board members. This resolution reflects larger scale work occurring jointly with the Vermont Superintendents Association, the Vermont Principals Association, and the Vermont School Boards Insurance Trust.
The VSBA board recommends passing this resolution. Resolution number 8 was submitted by the Champlain Valley School District, and it's on school stabilization, student mobility, and resilience.
Hey, I'm Lynn Jonick. I'm chair of the Champlain Valley School Board, CVSD School Board, and we decided to submit this resolution after coming into a situation for the last few years where we'd have a number of students who were either entering CVU or who were freshmen, sophomores at CVU who had to move out of district. And this would happen normally after the high school choice lottery had taken place. And they were having to move out of district really for a multitude of reasons, whether parents were being divorced and there would be no longer a home in our district, or we had situations where people had been renting in our district and our students had to move out of district when the family finally could afford to purchase their own home. We've had situations where there have been a death in the family and children were off in a foster care home where that too was out of district. And all of these situations were students who had been in our district for K-8, K-10. And we knew that the best thing for these students was for them to remain in our district. However, the only way for that to happen would be for either the family to pay tuition to CVU, or we would have them remain at CVU without any type of tuition or ability to count them in our ADM. Most situations where students were moving out of our district were related to economic reasons, and so the ability of these families to afford our tuition was not realistic. And so in most cases, we were not able to accept the students back into our district, even though, like I said, we all knew that this was what was best for all students. I suspect, given the economic impacts of COVID, that we will see more students in this similar situation. And so the board really wanted to figure out a way where we could keep kids who had been in our system for a long time and be reimbursed and be able to count them in our ADM from the state. And there currently is no mechanism for that. So that is the backstory for why we are proposing this resolution at this time.
Resolution 8, submitted by the Champlain Valley School District, allows for students who are entering or currently enrolled in high school and who experience a change in their fixed permanent legal residence to a different fixed permanent legal residence to remain in their current district. The General Assembly should provide a mechanism beyond 16 VSA 822, allowing students to complete their secondary education within the district where they were registered during any year in grades 8 through 11, and a process by which the current district retains the student in their ADM count. Nothing in this mechanism shall apply to students who are eligible for homeless status and who are protected under law.
The VSBA board recommends passing this resolution. And our final resolution was submitted jointly by the Otter Valley Unified Union School District and the Essex Westford School District on the topic of federal and state funding obligations, educational equity, funding adequacy, and unfunded mandates.
Resolution 9, submitted jointly by Otter Valley Unified Union School District and Essex Westford School District, requests that the state and federal governments provide the financial resources promised in pre-existing laws and required due to new burdens on public schools as a result of the pandemic, in a manner that ensures our children receive necessary academic, physical, and emotional resources through opportunities bestowed upon all.
The VSBA board recommends passing this resolution.
We want to take a moment to thank members of the VSBA Resolutions Committee for their consideration of all the resolutions sent in by member boards. Dawn Collins, as previously mentioned, the Vice President of VSBA, serves as the committee chair. Other members of the committee were Kevin Amiot, Michelle Braun, Lori Childers, Mark Clough, Colleen McKinnon, Mark Nielsen, Nancy Russell, Adrian Raymond, Jim Salzgiver, and Mark Schauber. And finally, we especially want to thank the board representatives who contributed explaining their board's resolutions for this video. Angeline Alley, Mike Fisher, Edie Granning, Lynn Jonick, Colleen McKinnon, and Jim Salzgiver. Thank you for taking time to learn about this year's VSBA resolutions. We look forward to seeing you at the virtual meeting on October 29th.